Video will be going over IRS Form 8802, Application for United States Residency Certification. So taxpayers generally use Form 8802 to request a letter of U.S. residency certification, known as IRS Form 6166, for the purpose of claiming tax benefits under an income tax treaty or a value-added tax exemption. You cannot use the letter of residency certification to substantiate that U.S. taxes were paid for the benefits of claiming a foreign tax credit. However, you can use this to avoid either additional income tax from a country pursuant to an income tax treaty or a value-added tax exemption. So the IRS recommends that you make your application at least 45 days before the date that you need to submit your Form 6166. So make sure you keep that in mind as you go through your application process. There is a user fee for each IRS Form 8802 that you submit. Now on this 8802, when we get to the last page, you'll see that you can request more than one certification from any number of countries that we have tax treaties with. So you can order multiple residency certifications for multiple countries, and you pay the same user fee regardless of how many letters are generated. Now these Form 6166 letters, they are an electronic, basically a computer-generated letter that's printed on U.S. Department of Treasury letterhead. So it is an official document, however, it is computer-generated form. So the processing of the Form 8802 is what generates each user fee. For individual applicants, the user fee is $85 per form. And again, this is regardless of how many tax years you request a certification or how many number of countries you're requesting a certification for. And for other taxpayer entities other than individuals, the user fee is $185. You may pay by check or money order if you submit payment with your completed form. You can also pay electronically by going to pay.gov. That's the federal government website for accepting electronic payments. Once you're on the site, you'll type in IRS certs in the search bar at the top right hand corner. Once you're there, you'll click the continue button, follow the on-screen prompts, and you'll need to enter some key information. You'll need to enter the name of the applicant, the taxpayer identification number, your name as the submission, as the submitter, if you are different from the applicant, email address, phone number, the number of 8802 forms that you're submitting, the amount of payment that's due, and then how you're going to pay, whether it's bank, debit, or a credit card. And then it'll take you to a payment window. Once you have your electronic payment completed, you'll have an electronic payment confirmation number, and you're going to need that number. You'll enter it at the top of the form. So we'll just say that this is your confirmation, and we're going to start going through this 3-page tax form with that, beginning with that. So we're not going to cover every possible contingency in this form. This form can be fairly straightforward. It can also be immensely complicated. So we're going to walk through all 3 pages of this, but there are a lot of details in the form instructions that will help you figure out what needs to go into the form, again, based on each taxpayer situation. So with that, let's start at the top of the form. If you have an additional request, like if you're submitting this form to request additional letters of certification for a tax period that you already received one, check this box. This means this is flagging to the IRS that you've already requested some letters and you're requesting more of the same letter. Now, a foreign claim form, you may attach a foreign claim form that another country has sent to you. Submitting it or leaving it out of your submission is not going to affect your certification. If the IRS does not have an agreement with that country to date stamp or process the form, they simply won't process it and they'll mail the foreign claim form back to you. So let's start with the applicant's name. We're going to use our hero John Doe. We're going to keep this as simple as possible, but if he was married, you would put his wife Jane on here as a married, filing a joint taxpayer. It is important to get this information exactly as it appears in the tax records. So if your taxpayer name has changed since the most recent 8802 was filed, if your name is changed since the last tax return, you need to be very particular about what goes here. So at the top, you're going to enter the name and taxpayer ID number exactly as they appear on the tax return for the period or periods that you're requesting. If you have a change in your taxpayer name, then the Form 8802 must be submitted under the new name, and then you will update the previous name down below. So once you have all the correct application name and information, you go down to line 1. If there's a reason that your name and ID number should appear differently on the certification, you would enter your name and taxpayer ID as it should appear. And this might be based on requirements of the other country or something like that. Then your application or your applicant's address for the calendar year during which your certification is requested. So include the country, zip, and postal code, and do not enter a post office box or a care of address. The IRS may deny certification if you do so. And then in line 3A, you're going to provide an address if you want the completed forms of or letters of certification mailed to a different address than what's up here, then enter that address here. Otherwise, the IRS will send all of your completed forms to the address that you outlined in line 2. So again, you can put a different address here, but you don't need to. Now, if you've appointed a third party, like your CPA, to receive this information on your behalf, or your attorney, you can enter that information. So we'll enter John Doe's attorney's information. CAF number, by the way, stands for the Central Authorization File. This is the computer-based record system that the IRS maintains, and it contains all of the third-party authorizations, whether it's power of attorney, delegated by using IRS Form 2848, or whether it's a tax information authorization using Form 8821, then the IRS enters that information into the CAF, and it issues a CAF number, a unique 9-digit number for each person that's in the CAF. So that's more than 9 digits. So we enter that in there because this will flag in the IRS record system that John Smith is indeed under this CAF number, or it won't. But regardless, this matches up. So every time John Smith receives third-person taxpayer information on behalf of another taxpayer, they're required to enter their CAF number, and there is an audit trail for each person that is authorized to receive a taxpayer's information. And each time they actually put that information into a file. So when the IRS processes this, before they release this information to John Smith, they will go and determine that he is in the CAF and that there is an active either Form 8821 or active Form 2848 that specifically designates that he has access to that information, or that he's authorized to represent the taxpayer before the IRS. So that's kind of just a peace of mind for most taxpayers. It might not be that crystal clear. In line 4, depending on the type of entity you are, you're going to check. So you have if you're an individual, obviously we'll walk through that. Partnerships, trusts, estates, corporations, S corporations, employee benefit plans, tax-exempt organizations, disregarded entities like an LLC, and nominee applicants. So there are all of these different types of situations. We're not going to go over them in detail. We're going to go through the individual route for John Doe, just to walk through this as an example. However, the IRS form instructions do contain a lot of detail about how tax treaties work with various different types of taxpayer entities. For example, the IRS, if you're an S corporation, that generally is not considered to be a U.S. resident for purposes of income tax treaties. Same with partnerships. However, there may be a process by which each partner or each S corporation shareholder might meet the criteria to still receive that tax treaty benefit. However, there are very specific rules on how that would go. So if you're not an individual, or if you get stuck on one of these, please make sure that you follow the form instructions for line, depending on which situation you are, line 4A through 4J. There are step-by-step detailed instructions for each situation. So we're going to go through as if our hero John Doe is a U.S. citizen. There are various different types of status, and then what to do for each status. All of that information is located in the form instructions. Since John is a U.S. citizen, there are no special instructions that are required. But if, for example, he was a green card holder and he was a lawful permanent resident, then he would need to provide a copy of his current Form I-551, or a statement from U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services that lists registration number, date and port of entry, date of birth, and classification. So depending on your status, you may need to provide additional documentation. For our hero, John Smith, he does not. He is a U.S. citizen. So we're going to move on to the next. John Doe. I forgot. John Smith being the attorney. So we're going to put applicant's name up here. In line 5, was the applicant required to file a U.S. tax form for the tax periods? Yes, he is in this case, he is a Form 1040 filer. However, if no, there may be some sort of explanation, and then you will need to attach proof of why you weren't required to file a tax return. So again, this depends on which situation, and there is a table 1 in the form instructions that specifically states required statement if the applicant did not file a U.S. income tax return. For example, if the applicant was an individual, then they would need to attach proof of income and a written statement indicating why that individual was not required to file a tax return. If the person's a U.S. citizen, then the written statement must be made under penalties of perjury. If it's a minor child under the age of 19, then you would need to attach a copy of Form 8814, which is the parent's election to report child's interest in dividends, so on and so forth. So whatever the situation is, if you were not required to file a U.S. income tax return for the year, please check out the form instructions so that you can figure out which type of statement you need to attach to it. So if you selected no, you must answer number 6. So if you weren't required, then was it a parent organization, or an owner of, a corporation, like a corporate taxpayer entity? Was that entity required to file a tax return? However, if we answered yes, we don't have to answer number 6. We simply go on to number 7, where we outline the calendar years for which the certification is requested. So we're just going to write down that we need the certification for tax years 2018 to 2020. So you should enter the 4-digit tax year, and there are very specific instructions. So depending on your taxpayer status, whether your residency status, whether you're a fiscal year taxpayer, whether you're requesting for current year certification using the 3-year procedure, then just follow the form instructions for that. And then for the tax periods on which certification will be based, again, the form instructions have specific details. So if John is requesting calendar year 2018, he would actually have to write the tax period in the last month of that tax period. So that would be 2018 1/2 for December, 2019 1/2, and 2020 1/2. On line 9, you'll enter the purpose of certification and check the appropriate box, either income tax or VAT. If you're looking for a value add tax exemption, you must find the NAIC code, CS code, the North American Industry Classification System code. You can find this in the instructions for your income tax return. If you're a sole proprietor, you'd find this in the Schedule C instructions on Form 1040. You might find it on the instructions for 1120 for corporations. If you do not provide an NAICS code and one is not on your tax return, the IRS isn't going to make one up. So, and your letter of residency will only certify that you filed a return with a particular NAICS code if it matches the code on your application. So be very careful that everything is matching up between your income tax return and your completed Form 8802, because if there's a discrepancy between the two, then either the IRS will select something and you might not want that, you might want the other option, or the IRS might not process it and just spit it back out to you. So you don't want that. You would much rather just be able to have your paperwork processed as smoothly as possible. Now in line 10, you must attach penalty of perjury statements and attachments. So again, there is a second table in the form instructions that states specific penalties of perjury statements based on your taxpayer status and other aspects of your unique situation. Since John Doe is simply an individual, you need a statement from the individual that states something to the effect of, John Doe is a U.S. resident and will continue to be throughout the current tax year. So that is directly from the form instructions. And again, if you're a partnership, that might be different. Oh, I forgot I needed to add John Doe's taxpayer ID number. There we go. So, different other statements, most of them kind of have the same, along the lines of being a U.S. resident will continue to be so. However, if you're submitting for the 3-year procedure, the additional would be something like, and the following 2 tax years. So you might ask, what is the 3-year procedure? Well, generally certification happens for 1 year at a time. However, there is an option available where you can apply under a 3-year procedure rule. And basically in your first year, you would submit the completed form with all information. In the second year, you would basically just request very specific information on that form and then attach a copy of your previously filed form. So there's a little bit less paperwork that's required for the second and the third year. And again, the form instructions go into a little bit more detail. So if this is kind of a long-term project for you, you can select that you do the upfront paperwork in the first year, and then you're just refiling with kind of stripped down annual information designed to make the paperwork process a little bit more smooth for taxpayers and for the federal government. So you'll make your sworn signature here with the date, phone number. If this is a joint application, both spouses must sign. And then at the top, on page 3, is a list of all the countries or most of the countries that the U.S. has tax treaties with. So we're just going to say that John needs 3 certifications, 1 for each year in Germany, and he also does some business in Israel, and he does some business in Spain. So 3 for Germany, 3 for Israel, 3 for Spain. and then we're going to add the totals in each of these columns. That's line 11, and then in line 12 we're going to add the total of all columns, and we're requesting a total of 9 certifications, 3 for Germany, 3 for Israel, 3 for Spain, right? And of course we would need to enter John Doe's information, and this must be the same as on line 7, so this was 2018, 2019, 2020, right? So that's all we have for this tax form. Again, this is probably the most simple situation possible. They definitely can get more complex from here, depending on taxpayer status, residency status, and the number and types of countries that you're looking to provide a residency certification to. So that's all we have for this video. If you like, we have broken this down into great detail in our article, which you can find on our website. Simply go to teachmepersonalfinance.com, type in IRS Form 8802 in the search bar, and you should see our step-by-step guide. If you like our articles, please subscribe to our newsletter. If you like our YouTube videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And as always, if you have questions, please reach out in the comment section. Thank you very much and have a great day.